Imoti is a fantastic budget deck that can dominate without a single rare. My first video on the deck covered exactly how to do that, but if you decide you like the playstyle, adding those rares can really power up your game plan and let you have some absurd turns, like this. Yeah, budget Imoti can imitate it, but there's nothing like a no-holds-barred Cascade Storm. So, let's get into it. My build of Imoti still sticks to its core philosophy at whatever budget, and that's a crucial deck building choice. No cards that don't ramp you below 4 mana value. This makes it harder to protect Imoti without cards like Tyvar's Stand, but means every time we cast her we are guaranteed to hit a ramp spell, which is its own form of protection, as if they kill Imoti, all we need to do is make our land drop, and thanks to that ramp we can cast her again. And again. And finally the removal runs out and we can go off. That also means that almost every time we cast a spell with Imoti on the battlefield we're going to ramp, since those 8 mana Cascade cards are going to go into a 6 maybe, and then again into something that costs 5 or less. So first, let's cover the ramp. We want to skew our ramp sources towards creatures for all our emerge and convoke spells where possible. There's still a lot of good budget options here at common and uncommon, but we get to improve our consistency with rares. Llanowar Elves and Elvish Mystic are still our best 1-drops, but we get to add Delighted Halfling and Gilded Goose to the mix. A turn 1 ramp spell with another ramp spell on turn 2 lets us get a turn 3 Imoti, which is somewhat hard to do with only 4 1-drops, but super powerful when it comes off. At 2 mana, we're looking for ramp that produces multiple mana or does something else. The artifact mana is more likely to stay around than the creatures, but Lotus Cobra can get pretty nutty when we're taking multiple land drops in a turn, and these 2 drops are situationally able to ramp twice. At 3 mana, we can make use of our split ramp and payoff cards like Greater Tanuki and Beanstalk Giant, where we can ramp on one side, but then if we cascade into them, they've got a nice high mana value for us. In terms of pure ramp, Selvala is a nutty card that can easily add 7 mana at a time. Gwenna triggers on each cascade trigger, meaning she can gain us mana from casting our spells. And Topiary Stomper gets to attack pretty soon if we don't use it for something else, like Ingo and Essica, the 1/4 drop in the deck. See, 4 mana is the best to cascade off on Imoti, but it doesn't help us cast Imoti any earlier, so I've chosen to trim all of them but Inga, as she can generate a ton of mana with all of our creatures while also drawing cards, so she's a worthy include. We round off our ramp with non-creature options such as Kiora, which can draw so many cards in this deck and generate multiple mana alongside Relic of Legends, and Midnight Clock is a good mana sink if we ever get Hellbent. The full deck list is in the description if you want a bit more detail, but other than Selvala and Gwenna, the ramp is pretty close in power level to our budget list. It's the payoffs that get really nutty with the rarity bump. See, our payoffs are split into 2 categories, raw power and cost reduction. Some expensive spells are so good that they naturally fit into our ramp strategy and are good enough by themselves, even if Imoti isn't on the battlefield. Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger deals with permanents some struggle with, and if Imoti is on the battlefield it can even bring friends. There's a fair few cards in this category, including the Spell Lands, Turn Timber Symbiosis and Seagate Restoration, which will let us increase our chances of hitting a Cascade spell while maintaining a high land count. A big boost from the budget is extra turn spells, of which we play 3. The issue with extra turns is they often take up all your mana, but if you cascade into them, or if they have cascade themselves, it's often the end of the game right there. Mind control effects are still great, and we have a few of those and gain a 5 mana one at the rare slot. There's a lot of cards that are in here just for value, so you can mix and match them if there's some you like, some you don't like, but if the Imoti plan fails, powerful cards are a good backup, and they go so well together when it doesn't. But the most powerful change we get from rares are the volume of cost reduction spells. See, Imoti doesn't care how much mana you pay for a spell, only its mana value. At uncommon, we still had a few cost reduction effects that we're playing, such as Mockery of Nature with Emerge. We can sacrifice a large creature to cast this 9 mana spell for 1 mana, but still have the chance to cascade into an 8-drop. We get to play 2 more Emerge cards at rare in Decimator Provinces and Elder Deep Fiend, which is why we want to have redundant creatures ready to sacrifice to start the chain if need be.
I'm in danger!
And while we played some Convoke cards in the budget list, they get big upgrades here. This Dino and Mascot can be played for 0 mana for big value and still cascade for the full mana price. But rather than just mechanics, at rare and mythic there are a ton of random spells with cost reduction we can abuse, with the strongest being the Great Henge. For as long as 2 mana, we can cascade into an 8-drop, all while ramping and drawing cards at the same time. It does everything. The magic mirror is from the same cycle and isn't often as cheap as we only have 11 spells, but it can add up when we're cascading into said spells every time we cast a spell. Emerald Call the Promised End is our biggest spell, and we can cast it for as low as 8 to 6 mana depending on how things are going, while Galta is often 2 mana without much effort. With all of these cost reduction effects, untapping with Imoti can lead to a literal 100 mana worth of spells cast as early as turn 4 if the cards come up right. The last cards I'll mention are our free 5-drops. See, once Imoti resolves, every spell we cast ramps us. It's either a ramp spell or it cascades into a ramp spell, with 3 exceptions if it's going to hit one of these. Time Warp gives us an extra turn, which as we've discussed is broken, and Invoke the Wind steals a problematic permanent. The best form of removal is just to take the problem and make it your opponent's. And the last card is Cavalier of Gales. Because of its Brainstorm effect, it can set up future Cascade triggers by putting something nice on top of our deck. These are each powerful enough that it's fine if we hit these instead of ramp, but beware, you'll actually ramp on 95% of spells cast, not 100. For the mana base, it's still mostly basic lands, with some additional dual and utility lands, but nothing special beyond that, other than moving into what I didn't include. Why so many basics? Well, I didn't include tap lands. Imoti is a deck that always needs to pull back from behind, basically every single game, as our game plan is casting a free 1 on turn 3 or 4 that we need to untap with. A tap land making this one turn later can often be enough that we have no chance to go off. I only include a few situational tap lands, one being the Alchemy Forsaken Crossroads since it's untapped when you're under play. I also haven't included any other alchemy cards as I don't enjoy them so much in general, with the exception of Verdant Restoration being from that weird set where it has a card, but it doesn't, but it does. Anyway, it plays non-alchemy cards and basically wins the game, so I don't mind it. I'm also not playing Snowlands, simply because I enjoy using my Tokyo basic lands. It is definitely worth playing them if you don't mind the art, as you get to play Into the North and Icebreaker Kraken, which are both right on theme, but given Brawl is mostly a casual format, I'm happy to lose a game or two by not having these cards if it means I get to play the basics I want every other game. If you like the snow, you can just choose one mana ramp card and one big payoff that probably aren't in your collection and play those instead. And finally, I did say that one mana ramp is our strongest line, but I'm not playing Arboreal Grazer or this Kami. And in a similar vein, I'm not playing Explore and Growth Spiral. See, I tested these for my budget list, but found while 39 is a good land count, it isn't enough to make sure that these always hit a land drop when you need them to, which can be backbreaking. So for consistency's sake, since what our deck wants to do most is ramp, I've stuck to cards that we know are going to ramp us every time we cast them. So there we go, that's the deck list. There are so many cards in Arena, I've doubtless missed a few perfect additions, so let me know in the comments if I've missed any you like so I can add them myself, or just give me feedback on the deck. I really enjoyed hearing in the last Imoti video that the deck was helpful for people. But for now, thanks for watching again, good luck in your next game, and stay tuned for further Brawl and Commander guides.